Hey guys, Ranjit this side. Whenever we discuss about the roadmap towards let's our data scientist profile or data analyst profile, one language which comes very often is SQL. So in this video we will be going through what is SQL, and then it will be more of like a crash course, and then we will try to understand why do we really need SQL and where does it come into play in our professional life. Apart from that, I will also go through all the basic things which will help you to write the queries, or let's say at least it will help you to start your journey with the SQL. This is one of the many videos that will help you to understand SQL and then to write the basic as well as advanced SQL queries. And see, some people likes to work with Microsoft SQL Server, and some people likes Oracle, and then we have SQLite, and then we have MySQL, right? So it is basically different types of software, or let's say DBMS, or let's say the database management softwares, which is basically used to access the data, or let's say write or update the records in a database. All these softwares does the same thing. The only difference is somewhat the syntaxes. So I will go through them one by one, when the time comes, or let's say whenever there is a need. Okay, so first of all, why do we need SQL? Or why do we need database, or why do we need a server? So whenever you upload an image into an Instagram, or let's say when you write an article or post on Facebook, or when you upload a video on YouTube, there must be a place or a space wherein all these data goes, or all these media file goes, right? So this is where the server comes into play. So server can be kept anywhere across the world. So you can access that server in a direct way or the indirect way based upon the access that you have towards that server. So as a normal user, or let's say as a Facebook user, you can upload the content, or let's say upload the post, and then whenever you need, you can view that post on the Facebook with the help of internet, right? So most of the time the servers can be anywhere in the world, and then you just need an internet access to access that data, or let's say a server. But again, within that server we have the databases. So database is again it's kind of let's say a bucket, and within that bucket we have multiple things. And when I say multiple things, it's called the table. So table is somewhat similar to what the Excel sheet looks like. When I say somewhat, because see, there are two types of SQLs. One is SQL, which is structured query language. Then there's NoSQL. So which is more of like not a structured data. Let's say the data doesn't look like a Excel sheet, or let's say Excel sheet format, right? So we will be focusing more on the SQL part, because NoSQL is again out of the scope of this overall series, or let's say this video. So let's talk a bit more about the server. So how does this server looks like? First let's see that. So this is how a server looks like, or let's say the overall network looks like, and then I will show you the server as well. So basically these are like your systems, your, let's say, your laptop, your mobile, or your computer, or let's say even the systems in your office, right? And then this is connected with a switch is basically a common platform. So in this scenario it's more of like an internet, right? And then between the internet and the server there is something called firewall. So basically firewall has a list of, or let's say set of instructions which allows, or which allows or rejects the request which is done from, let's say, your computer to your server, right? So basically it has a list of instructions whether to allow you to access that server or not. So that's where the firewall comes in, and firewall is really important when it comes to the authentication, or let's say when it comes to the security of the server. Now the server part. Now let me show you how the server looks like. So this is how a server looks like it's a collection of servers, let's say. So it's a big room. So normally companies like Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, so all these companies, or let's say most of the companies who manages the data, they have big server rooms, not one but many server rooms, and within that server rooms we have hundreds or thousands of servers. So this is how a server room looks like. And then if you go inside this server room, it's like really hot, but to make sure that the servers don't get burnt, so it's kept on a particular degree of temperature with the help of cooling, like the AC, right? So these server rooms needs to be kept cooled all the time, not cooled but chilled all the time. So yeah, I went to some of the server rooms and it's like you cannot be staying there for like more than couple of minutes, because then it's like totally chilled. Anyways, and then apart from that, I will show you one more example probably. Yeah. So this is how what I was mentioning earlier. So you have a workstation, you have a smartphone, you have a laptop, and then all these are connected to the internet, and then internet is basically connected with the server. So in the previous example, we were talking more about the firewall in between, but here you don't need. I mean, of course you need, but we just skipped it. So yeah, so this is what a server looks like. Now within the server we have databases like I mentioned earlier. Now I will show you the database. So now if you see, this is Microsoft Management Studio. So this is one of the software being provided by Microsoft itself, and this is we also call it SSMS when you discuss more about it, or let's say when you talk about it in a professional environment. So this is also called SSMS, which is SQL Server Management Studio. And I will go through the installation process and how to configure Microsoft SQL Server, and then Oracle, MySQL, and then SQLite, as well as PostgreSQL as well in the next video, how to install and configure it in your system. And so yeah, so this is installed in my system. Since see, every CPU can be treated as a server because it does have a space like your hard disk, but you cannot, or let's say you can use it as a server on a regular basis. Let's say if you are hosting your website somewhere, like let's say you are hosting your website. So hosting means you have to put your website file somewhere, so that you can access it. So you can do same on your CPU as well, but the thing is, then whenever someone needs to access that website, your CPU should be kept running 24/7, and then the energy that it takes, it's too much. So if you are trying to do something like that, be ready to make a good payment for the electricity bill. But nowadays it's really cheap to buy the hosting service. So there are many cloud solutions as well as servers available nowadays. So yeah, you don't need to basically run a CPU 24/7 just to save money. I would say you will have to pay more for the electricity rather than paying for the cloud service. Anyways, so this is how I have installed this SSMS in my system, and then this is a database. So this is one of the database that I have created, this data scientist, and basically you can just simply say create database and then database name, right? So this is how you create a database. Now I'm just give you an example because we will be going through in the detail in the coming videos. And then within the database you have list of tables, right? So these are the tables. Let's say I have created this table, DBO employee master. Now if we go a bit more into what the DBO is basically let's say it's a schema. So this is called a schema. So schema is basically for an example, when you are building a home, you need to plan your home way ahead. So in the same way, we have to, whenever we are creating a database, and then whenever we are creating the tables within the database, we have to plan how a table should look like, what is the architecture of that overall database, how the table name should be named, so which is called nomenclature, let's say naming of the tables and the databases, right? So the tables can be in different database, and then there can be multiple tables as well. So this is one of the table example, and if I show you, if I go within this table, then we have columns. So columns, like I mentioned earlier, this is more like Excel sheet, right? So there are applications which we can use, within which we can use Excel as a database as well. So I mean, that can also be done. Anyways, so like within the Excel we have IDs, first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, and address. Now this is what you have to focus over here. It's like, see the names that I have given, first name, middle name, last name, DOB, address. So whenever you are giving a name to the columns within a table, or let's say when you are giving a name to the table name itself, make sure you are making it a proper naming thing, because Otherwise it will be really tough for anyone else to take care of your, or let's say to support your database or the table, because if you have not named it properly, then it will be really tough to manage it. And also what you have to make sure that either the first name should be like, let's say, let me give an example. So I'm saying select star from table name, right? Now here I have not created any space, or let's say I have not added any space between first name and middle name. So there is first without space name. So this is how the naming should be given. Or you can also give something like first underscore name. And because if you have a space between the columns, then you have to add this square bracket, which is not, I would say, a recommended thing, because then it will be really tough to manage or let's say run the queries and everything. So always make sure either it should not have space, or even if it is a space, make sure the space is covered with the underscore, right? So there are functions which can be used to cover up those things, but why to create an issue to solve that issue, right? So keep things simple as much as possible. Now for this, so this is again one of the syntax which is used in SQL, and similar kind of syntax is used in all other database management systems. Let's say your Oracle, MySQL, and then you have PostgreSQL and SQLite and what. So select statement is almost similar in all the database management systems, right? So but here what we have to focus over here is, first of all, if right now when I wrote select star, so this gave us the list of all the columns. But if I do not want to see all the columns, you can simply just say select first name, and then what I'm doing, basically I'm clicking on execute. So to execute, you can even press on F5, so it will give you an output. So this is how you select a statement. Now in the similar way, we can also insert it. So focus on what I'm mentioning now, because this is really important. So insert into, right, and then the table name. Now see, I will not give you a full example right now, because I do not want this value, the video to be longer and then you get bored. But you have to focus. Now if I say, I'll give you an example again. Let me take all the columns. Now if I want to add the values for the first name, right, let's say I'm saying Raj. Now if you are inserting here more than 50 characters, it will not take. The reason being, here while creating the schema for this particular table, I have maintained that it should have 50 characters maximum. So if the number of characters for this column is more than 50 characters, it will not take, it will give you an error. And in the similar way, for the middle name, for the last name, date of birth, again I'm mentioning that the date of birth, the data type should be the date. So what it means is it cannot have float data type, or no, I will come on to that different types of databases which are used in SQL in the future videos. But in this we will focus on the basic things. So let me give you an example, how to insert into the table. So Raja and middle name, let's say I'm saying R double inverted comma, and then let's say I don't want last name, right? And then I'm saying the date of birth can be now do focus on what I'm writing right now. Okay, 1987 1104, right? So this is the format which I've maintained, like 1987, and then 11th month, like the November, and 4th of November 1987. And then I'm saying I live in Abu Dhabi, right? Now when I insert it, now focus on the date of birth format. Okay, this is what the format I have given. And if I so one row affected, because we added one row, and then completion time is this much, right? Now if I do the select statement, Now focus on what it has done. Since I have created the date of birth while creating the table as a data type, it has converted this format into this format, which is really important, because if it is only a string format, then when you are trying to filter the data within the database, for an example, when you filter the data in Excel, you must have seen that in the drop down, the dates are actually dates and not the not a string, or let's say a text. So in the similar way, you have to also needs to take care of the same thing in database as well, right? So now if I go just one step back, and for the select statement, here you can see we have two records over here, right? But if I just want to see one record, I can write, let's say, select top 1 star, right? So what it will give you, it will give me just one record, right? So this is how you can filter things, or there are many other ways to filter the data. I will come on to that in the coming videos. Okay, so in the similar way, we can do the same, the filtration, or let's say select statement, insert statement in other database management systems. Now we have update syntax, right? Then we have select, then we have delete. So all these syntaxes can be it's not the same in all the database management systems, but it's almost the same thing what it does. Now there is a question which normally is being asked in the interviews: what is the difference between the delete and truncate, right? So I will come on to this topic, because this is really important to understand the difference between the truncate and the delete syntax, and we will discuss about it when you actually understand how the overall these things work. I mean, overall SQL, or let's say you have a basic understanding. Otherwise, even if I tell you right now what is the difference, you will not understand, so there is no point. Anyways, so these were the basic the columns within the table, right? Then we have keys. So we have primary key over here. So primary key means and there is primary key, there is a foreign key. I will come on to that topic within this video. But primary key is basically there can be only one let's say a key which is a unique one. So when I say unique, so if I say, let's say, select star from this one, so this ID is a primary key. See, if you see over here, employee master, so basically it says that it cannot have a duplicate entry. So this makes sure that we at least have a column which basically tells us how many records are there. Let me give you one more example, how to filter the data, right? So okay, I forgot to mention what this employee master. So basically when we create a database and then we create the master, or let's say when we create the tables, there used to be master tables which have all the relevant information, or let's say the important information. So those kind of information goes to the master table, and then there are a couple of tables which are like transaction tables, to which the data goes after some kind of actions in the master table. I will come on to those topics in the coming videos again, because like I said, I don't want this to be very complicated for you in the first video itself, right? So if I filter this data, like I mentioned, there was like there's an option of top 1, but if you really want to filter it based on the date, let's say, right, and then we say where DOB is greater than, let's say 1987 09 903. What it will do, it will filter the data. So now it will show you only one record with the ID 2, and if I say less than, right, so it will give you the other record, or there is no record less than this one, right? So if I say less than equal to, then it will show you at least one record, because this is what equal to means. Okay, this is almost similar to what the most of the programming language does, but the SQL is basically, it works, or let's say this is more of to work with the database or retrieve the data from the database. So in the starting of this video, I mentioned there are like two categories of SQL or the databases, right? One is SQL and the other one is no SQL. So SQL is more focused on relational database management systems. When I say relational database, so it means the tables that we create are more of let's say related to each other most of the time, right? That's why when we try to filter one data, we can filter based on that there will be a relation to another tables as well, or table as well. So that's where the primary key and the foreign key comes into play. I will come on to that topic again. Now let's go back to this topic again, because I need to make you I need to clear some more the problems, or let's say topics within this select statement. Okay, so when we run this select statement, there are columns, right? So these are called attributes, right? And also it can also be used or called column. And then the rows that we have, this is also called a tuple. And then the collection of the multiple rows and columns is basically called a table. And in SQL world, this is more of a relation table. Now let me give you an example of how the different syntaxes that I use to select a record from a database on the basis of, let's say, different softwares or RDBMS. So RDBMS is relational database management systems, right? So for an example, now if I'm just commenting this, so let's say for MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite. So for this, the comment syntax what we wrote over here, it's almost similar, but what we do, we normally write select star from the table, and then we say limit to 10 number of records, right? So this is how the select statement is written in this database management system, right? And then similar to this, and then if I write it for, let's say, Oracle database, it will be select star from the table, and then where row number is greater than or equal to 10, right? And if I want to write the same syntax in SQL, right, because we are limiting it with the number of records as 10, so I will write, so let's say SQL server, it will be top 10, right? So this is how the SQL statement. Now if you see over here, let me just comment the top syntax, right? So even though we have written select top 10 star from this table, but since we do not have more than 2 records, it will still give you at least the 2 records that it have, right? And if it had more than 10 records, then it will show you only 10 records, because I'm saying to select only the top 10 records from the database. Now let's talk about this select statement a bit more. So you must have noticed, like whenever I'm writing this select star from, this is uppercase, and then rest of the table name and table name and the schema name is lowercase. Why is it so? See, it's not a mandatory, but it's a good way of writing the syntax, because it will help you to differentiate between what is the function, or let's say the syntax being used, and what is a different, because if you see this is colored, right? So this will help you to differentiate between the format, or let's say the syntax. So these uppercase or let's say the syntax or the keywords are basically they are called the keywords. It means that these are reserved words which cannot be used to create other functions, or so basically you cannot create something similar to the select statement, because this is already a reserved keyword. And then rest of the words, or let's say the table names and the column names, can be smaller or bigger, but try to keep, like I mentioned in the earlier, try to keep the names as close to what they are related to. So if it is like, let's say, first name, it should not be it should not be like like friend name or something, but it should be like F name or first name or first underscore name. So these kind of columns do make sense. So it's more of like use your common sense while creating the table and the database names. Now again, like I mentioned earlier, here we can do is select star. Now let's also talk about the filtration and the sorting process. So this select statement can be filtered like we did earlier, where DOB is greater than 1987, 09 and 03, which will give you the at least one record. Now if I want to sort this data, now so what we can do, we can say order by one. So this will make sure that order by one is basically the first column, right? So it will order. Now by default the order by is ascending order, but if you specifically say that you want to sort it by descending order, then it will, if you notice over here, now it's ID comes first, I mean the second or the maximum value of ID comes first, and then the lower than that. So this is how the descending works in the SQL, right? And instead of one, you can also write ID over here, so which is almost similar to what column 1 does, right? Okay, great. So this is how you filter and sort the data. Now the most important thing which I normally used to ask the candidates during the interview process is the order by which the SQL, or let's say the SQL statement runs. So as you notice over here, so we are mentioning that select star from and all. So how the order executes in the SQL. So when I say the order executes, so there is like two ways. One is what the people normally understands as when I say select. So this is not the execute. Okay, so I'll come back to this. So select from where group by having, and then order by. So okay, this is not the order of execution of SQL statement. This is simply the order of writing the SQL statement, but not execution. So execution flow is a bit different. I will come on to that as well. So what it's basically doing right now, let me just write it down so that you can also take a note. So this is order of writing SQL statement, or let's say syntax, right? And this is normally asked in interviews. So first you write select and then star, or let's say the column names, and then from where condition. Group by having is something which we still need to discuss. But yeah, after that we have order by, right? So this is the order of writing SQL statement. Now let's focus on how the SQL statements get executed when we write this statement. So now in the same order, we are how the SQL takes this statement. So first it will look for from which table it needs to take the data, right? Then where condition, it will filter the data. Let me write it here, over here. Filter, right? And this is which table. Group by, again, it's aggregation function, let's say. I will come on to that, like I mentioned. Having is basically used when we are using a group by or aggregation function used with group by. Let's just focus on this much, right? And then we have select, and then we have order by. Now why this is important is because if you focus on this order, then you will understand why when you run a SQL statement, or let's say SQL query, why is it taking so much of time? The reason being, it depends on the number of records, how much time should it take, and then the filtration process. Because when we say the from which table, so basically it's first of all it's bringing whole data from the database, or let's say from the table, right? So even if you are saying that I'm filtering the data, but no, the first statement, or let's say first execution, is from, right? So it will take the whole data from the table and then it will filter the data. So the time that it needs to take, it will take anyways. And then we are doing the group by, and having is again grouping by the data, so it's again taking time, and then selecting. So what we can do over here, try to take less columns as much as possible, or take only the relevant columns from the table. Don't take all the columns which is not needed. And then at the end it's ordering. So again, if you have larger data, and then you're ordering that data, is again gonna take more time. So try to take, like I said, try to take less number of columns, and then try to filter as less as possible. So for that, like I mentioned earlier, the planning, or the everything depends on the schema level. So how you plan the table structure should be, which all columns should come into those tables, create master tables for everything, and then try to relate with, or try to have a relationship between multiple tables with the help of foreign key, right? So yeah, order of execution of syntax, let's say. Should I go over the views? Okay, let me give you a brief about the overall, what are most of these important let's say points, right? So we have keys, like I mentioned earlier. Then we have constraints, I will come on to that. And then we have triggers are basically, let's say we are creating a query to make an action after an action. Let's say, for an example, when you are updating a table, right, or when you are inserting a table, inserting a data into a table, you need to have another action based on that action, right? So when I say action, it's basically update, delete, or insert actions. So the triggers is basically gets triggered based on those actions, right? Then we have views. Views is again really important. It basically combines multiple tables to get let's say a digitized way of table. So a view is a collection of multiple tables based on the relationship between those tables. You will work on views more often than the tables, because when you want to see multiple columns and then when you want to combine multiple tables to see the data as a report, let's say, so views come into play. And then again, programmability is where you create the store procedures. Store procedure is something very important in SQL world. Functions is again important. I will come on to these topics as well. Then you have, let's say, security. Security is where you create the roles and let's say the responsibilities. The roles, when I say roles, is more like whether a user can read or write, or let's say whether he or she can do both the activities, or if that particular user have access to particular table or not. So all these things are maintained in the server roles. Logins are basically created to make sure that not it's basically used to give the access to the user or create new users. So there are like two types of users. One is a Windows authenticated user, and then you have SQL login users. So Windows authentication user is basically they can log into the system, or let's say the database or the server, based on their Windows authentication or credentials. and SQL users use the username and password to log into the server, right? And then you have since it's a free version, I think it doesn't have probably, but there is something called jobs as well, or let's say agents. So jobs are used to create the scheduler in the database, or let's say in the server, so that you can have you can run some procedures on the regular basis, or let's say on the timely basis, with the help of a scheduler. So those jobs are basically helps to run, let's say to import the data from an Excel, or those kind of things can be scheduled, and they are really useful. I think this is too much for this video. Thank you so much. If you did not understand anything, please make sure to comment in the comment box and let me know. I will be really happy to help you out, because like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, SQL is really important whichever profile you are in. Even if you are a data scientist, business analyst, or data analyst, data engineer, whichever, if you are working with the computer, or let's say at least the Excel data, SQL is really important for you. If you like this video, and if you are able to understand to some extent what I try to make you understand, please like, share and subscribe to this video or the channel. Till then, take care, goodbye. The next video will be coming very soon.